But what you don't do is draft a 21-year-old kid 10 months off the 27-year-old franchise quarterback. Look, it's easy to say now. It's easy to play hindsight. I freely admit I didn't think it would be as bad as it turned out to be. But now I could laugh about it. And the Eagles know it, Jody. The Eagles know they made a mistake. And they said, we screwed that up. We screwed it up.
I'm glad one of us is laughing.
If Jalen Hurts develops, it becomes a star quarterback. I don't want the Eagles taking a quarterback on the first 2 days of the draft.
Guess what? I think they'd be perfectly fine doing so because Jalen Hurts had some moxie. He understands the game. He's a competitor. Carson Wentz is a wuss who, oh my God, they took my replacement. $65. How are you, everybody? Your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen, here with you for the next couple hours, right? You're going to hang for the 2 hours, Mac. You don't have to go anywhere, do you?
Don't have to go anywhere in the 2 hours, but, you know, I always say we're day to day, Jody. Technically, we're minute to minute, so hopefully I get, you never know, Wi-Fi problems. I think, you know.
I'll split the difference. I'm hour to hour. I don't know about you. You might be minute to minute. We're all both better than day to day, but I'll go about hour to hour. So we get this first hour in. We'll regroup. We'll get a second hour in. It'll be all good. Thanks for tuning in to this Thursday edition of Bird 65, show number 64.
64.
So we're sneaking up on 100, and we are less
than three.
I
got to start doing this. I got to start doing a Russell Baxter thing and start saying, okay, what's the best number 64 in NFL history? I got to start that. Yes. I might have to go into Russell's sort of laboratory and come up with something.
And all you got to do is go back on his Twitter because he does it all the time. That is one of Russell's key elements on Twitter. He's a good follow at Bax Football Guru, Russell Baxter, who will get back on the show down the road a little bit. We are having our favorite guest. He comes on basically whenever we're stuck. And, oh, by the way, every time he does, he brings information and good insight. Eddie Kratz is going to join us. And we have a new first-time guest that we'll give you details on coming up. But where do I want to start today, Johnny Mac? One of two places. And I sent you a question I was probably going to ask you last night as I was prepping to do one of the 3 shows I did yesterday. But I'm going to hold off on that. Instead, I'm going to lead off today's show talking about the former coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. That would be Doug Pederson, who has been making the rounds here in the last couple of weeks to the Philadelphia show. He did a golf tournament here in town and he talked to some media people, and he hopped on Sirius XM's NFL radio, and he had some interesting things to say, one of which I am going to make note of because I agreed with the organization. I believed the organization when they said what they said more than 12 months ago on draft night when they used the second-round pick on Jalen Hurts, and most people who covered the team, most Eagle fans, lost their mind. How could they do that? What are they thinking? Why are they wasting a second-round pick? Carson Wentz is the franchise quarterback. I was cool with it all along because I believed when they said, and it was the first thing that popped into my head that night before we heard from either Doug Pederson or Howie Roseman. They drafted a backup quarterback, and they got one relatively inexpensive as the price of backup quarterbacks was going up and up and up and up. And we knew what happened with Nick Foles. They won a Super Bowl with their backup quarterback. Then he got too good and too expensive for them to be able to keep him as their backup quarterback. And that's why he went elsewhere. So the price is going up in a capped world. If you can get a competent backup quarterback for what you're going to pay a second-round draft pick in his first year on his rookie deal, I thought that was a pretty good move. I thought it was an okay value for the use of the draft pick. Most people did not, you included. Doug Pederson doubled down on it and said, yeah, we were drafting a backup quarterback. Every year you go into the draft, and if you believe that you're good at evaluating quarterbacks, you're looking at all the quarterbacks who are available, and then you decide where exactly you're going to take one. Eagles decided in the second round because they thought Jalen Hurts was value at that time. Well, now we jettison ahead 14, 15, 16 months later, and a whole lot of stuff went down. Not all of it good for the Eagles. But going back to that night, I didn't have a problem with it. I believe Doug Pederson when he says that's why they took Jalen Hurts to become their backup quarterback. Do you?
Oh, I believe him. I believed him that night. I believed the Eagles that night. That was the plan. This was a cost-effective backup for a quarterback that had some injury issues, although, had proven he could get through full seasons. People go back to the concussion in the playoff game, but remember, he played that entire season. So I believed it. That wasn't the issue. The issue was, and I called it the night of the draft. I wrote about it on Sports Illustrated at the time, and Ed Kratz will be on the show in a couple of minutes. I called it a vacuum pick. I called it a laboratory pick. In perfect circumstances, when you're working with deadly viruses, this sounds pretty good. Let's get a cost-effective backup. You're not taking into effect human nature. And remember what Doug Pederson said, Jody. Here's the problem. They drafted a backup quarterback who's now their starting quarterback. So that kind of tells you something. Now, Doug also said in the context of those quotes, it also doubled down. Remember, Carson Wentz was 10 months off the record extension, not only for this organization, but for the NFL as a whole. Now, as we all know, fast forward, if things worked out with Carson Wentz, that contract is actually team friendly. So I had no problem with the Eagles doing that either. But 10 months off of that extension, they drafted another quarterback at number 53 overall. As I said, 27-year-old quarterback, that is unprecedented in the Super Bowl era. Unprecedented. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for a reason. Hindsight, we know those reasons now, Jody. And by the way, I didn't think it would explode to the level it did. Even I didn't think it would be as bad as it did. So now you can look back and say, oh, geez, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. Or you can, and the Eagles have to do this, and I don't blame them for doing this. They said, well, Carson didn't work out. Now we have a guy with an upside. They have to spin it in a positive way. I have no problem with that. But my point was, Doug is telling you the truth. The plan was for Jalen Hurts to be a cost-effective backup for 4 years and then spin him off for hopefully you could convince somebody this guy could be a starting quarterback, maybe play 2 games somewhere along the line, maybe get a first-round pick for him, something of that nature. Didn't work out that way. And it was a disaster for the fellow. Not about the player. Not about the player. It's about the organization thinking they were smarter than everybody else because everybody else doesn't do this for a reason. I talked about groupthink yesterday. This is where the Eagles should have went groupthink, and they didn't go groupthink, and they thought they were smarter than everybody in the room.
They made a mistake. It wasn't picking Jalen Hurts. The logic, as you said, in a vacuum was defendable. And I think actually maybe ahead of the curve. And yes, they might have been trying to be smarter than other teams. And if it had never been done before, that within 10 months of giving someone as big a contract that Carson Wentz got, no team has ever taken a quarterback that I get all of that. It could have been done right if they had a clue as to how it was going to affect Carson Wentz. And no one really knows. You can't possibly know. But you've been around the guy. The coaching staff's been around the guy. You spent quality time with him. You think you've got a grasp on his mindset as to how he's going to handle something like that. I'll also chastise the Eagles because I don't think enough conversations were had. Maybe they were in that paranoid mode we talk about altogether too often here on Birds 365 that, you can't give up the state secrets. God forbid we show up on Hard Knocks because someone will know our secret sauce on how to win football games. Well, sometimes you need to put that aside and just make the common sense move, which is talk to the guy. See how he handles it. If he handles it okay, you go ahead, you implement the plan. If he's going nuts, if he's screaming and yelling and you think he's going to lose his mind, like I think at least in part Carson Wentz did, then you rethink it and you might not make the pick. But I defended the pick that night. I'll defend it till the day I die. It made sense. Here's what I didn't know. And I kind of leaned on the Eagles knowing, which right now we know they had no clue, that Carson Wentz would be able to deal with this. That they could look Carson in the eye and explain it to him and say, Carson, Here's why we're doing what we're doing. We think this kid is a borderline first-round talent. He's sitting there in the second round. We need a backup quarterback. The guy who helped us win the Super Bowl, your buddy, well, not really that much your buddy because he kind of undercut him because the team actually liked Nick Foles better than they like Carson Wentz. But the guy who helped get you your Super Bowl ring, Nick Foles, is no longer here. So we have to have someone as your backup. We think this kid can get the job done, and he will come in we kind of gave you all that money, so we need a cost-effective backup, and we think Jalen Hurts can be that. I would have guessed Carson Wentz would have said, all right, I get what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Thanks for telling me ahead of time. You could have turned around and made it like you're bringing him behind the curtain. You're not trying to do something around Carson Wentz. You're including Carson Wentz in your Eagles groupthink. Apparently, they didn't do that, or if they did it, they didn't do it well enough, because we now know 14 months later what transpired, and Carson Wentz is out of here. I didn't have a problem then. I still don't have a problem now with the overall mindset of how they played it, but that's something that we can critique the Eagles on. You got to be able to have a grasp on your players. You got to know how they're going to react. If you make a decision like that, and I full well knew that it had pretty big ramifications. When you're talking about the quarterback position, it always has pretty big ramifications. They had no clue how Carson Wentz was going to react. And I would ask Doug Pederson that. If he was here on our show, I would say,
which, by the way, Doug, come on our show. I tried to reach out. But anyway, Jody, it's interesting because I disagreed with the pick on when they took it. And now I'm thinking, well, it's not that bad. I'm the exact opposite of you. I didn't think, as I said, it would blow up near to the degree. I thought it was a bad pick for the reasons I just stated. Then you add into it. I tell the story all the time. I got the pick about 2 minutes before they were going to take it. And I hesitated to put it out on social media because I said, this can't be true. This can't be true. Ultimately, I got it out there about a minute before they put it on TV. But ultimately, the decision was, and this makes it worse as well. The decision was between Jalen Hurts, J.K. Dobbins, who's turned into a pretty good running back with the Ravens, and Jeremy Chin, who turned out to be really. Can
I interrupt for a second? I don't want to do this, but I certainly want you to finish your story. So it would have been okay to pick a running back when they already had Miles Sanders in place. But it's not okay to pick a quarterback. What would it have done to Miles Sanders' psyche if they had taken Dobbins instead? Is that not the same exact thing?
I understand what you're saying, but quarterbacks are different, and we all know that. We're seeing with Aaron Rodgers, who is the best quarterback in football, and even he's affected by a guy who is grossly incompetent compared to him, and is not even close. Even he's affected. He dislikes the organization so much. He's trying to force his way out. The only reason he's trying to force his way out, no matter what he says publicly, is because they took Jordan Love. And remember, he's old. I believe the Packers have a better spin, and you can defend the Packers more than you can defend the Eagles because Carson Wentz was 27 years old. But it's interesting because Miles Sanders went backwards from rookie to sophomore season. Maybe if J.K. Dobbins is there. But the second part is the Eagles believe you need more than one running back. So their whole mentality at the time was, well, Miles isn't going to touch it 35 times a game. We want two good running backs, sort of like Cleveland, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Alex. Everybody's got two running backs in the NFL. That's just the way of the NFL. That's what they're going with. And then the guy I would have picked, which is Chin, who's turned into one of the better young safeties in the NFL. And obviously the Eagles have a significant need at safety. However, it worked out because the quarterback fell off the rails so badly. You needed a quarterback. Now you have a young quarterback, and we've been through. We'll see. It's up to Jalen Hurts. He'll get a limited opportunity to prove himself to be the starting quarterback of this team. So I'm kind of 180 away from you. Really disliked it night of. I think now, but partially the reason now it's not that bad. Remember, that wasn't the Eagles' plan. That's what Doug also clearly defined in the statements. No, we were not looking to replace Carson Wentz. We were not looking to push Carson Wentz. We just wanted a cost-effective backup. And what they didn't do was, you pointed out, Jody, was communicated.
Right.
I think Howie Roseman knew very quickly that night. Again, I think he's like me. I don't think he ever imagined it could go as bad. But when he had that first conversation with Carson Wentz, it did not go well. It did not go well. He was blindsided by it. He started to question the organization as a whole. You remember when all this started, Jody? And they were saying, well, can Doug Pederson's relationship with Carson Wentz is fractured. Then they fired Doug Pederson. Carson Wentz still wanted out. He didn't trust the organization.
Right.
He didn't trust the general manager. He didn't trust the owner. It all harkened back to that night in April of 2020.
And although we kind of have some fun with the new Eagles coach and his hammering home the use of the word competition, everything's a competition. Who's going to get the first lunch coming off the conveyor belt is a competition. He blatantly overstates it, but he's doing so for a reason. Competition is a good thing. That's one of the things I like about Nick Sirianni. I think he's having fun and overstating it, but how about a little competition in life, Carson Wentz? Was there really a competition? Come on. They did like Jalen Hurts. You got Joe Flacco and Jalen Hurts. Who's going to be the Eagle competition? Well, we don't know because there's a competition. Was there really going to be a competition going into last year between Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz? Of course not.
And there wasn't. There wasn't a competition. He should have handled it better. That's not an argument. But again, I go back to Aaron Rodgers for a reason. He might already have his gold jacket. They certainly already got it made. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's late 30s, and even he's upset that the Green Bay Packers are starting to think about the future, which they should be. Carson's 27, and that's why I say unprecedented. 27 and 10 months off the largest extension in NFL history from a guaranteed money standpoint. And he's going, what the hell am I missing? What the hell am I going on? But you're right, Jody. You're 100% right. You got to handle it better. You have to handle it better. I agree with that. It doesn't excuse the Eagles' failure to realize those unintended consequences. We talk about unintended consequences all the time. Look, you can't predict every single one of them. I couldn't have predicted this, but the Eagles should know Carson Wentz better than anybody. They should have at least realized some of the pitfalls and said, whoa, let's slow down. Let's think about this.
The critique of the Eagles after the fact is fair. I didn't have a problem with them doing it in the moment, but they didn't know their player as well as they needed to know their player, and shame on them for that. Let me just ask this question. I think it's probably an unfair question, but I'm not above asking unfair questions to you or anybody else. How does the sliding scale work where drafting a quarterback is acceptable? How young does the present quarterback have to be? How old does the quarterback that's going to be replaced at some time need to be? How much money is he making at the time? Where in the draft is it a third round? Is it a second round? Is it a first round pick? I haven't figured that out yet.
Well,
where the sliding scale of acceptability actually comes down.
There's no hard and fast rule, but I would say this. If you have a 27-year-old quarterback that you paid more money than anybody else in the history of the game, you shouldn't take a quarterback until day 3. I will say that. That's my personal sliding scale. You're always looking for developmental quarterbacks, as Doug said. And Doug is a quarterback, Clayton Thorson's of the world, who cares? Carson, interesting. Carson wanted the Eagles to draft Easton Stick that year. And the Chargers got Stick, who's a North Dakota State guy. And Carson's very close to him right before the Eagles got Clayton Thorson. They would have taken Stick and everything would have been perfect. You would have had best friends and everything would have been copacetic as the backup quarterback. He's not pushing them. But yeah, Jody, I mean, you got to be real. Again,
I got to hop in again. Hold on one second. How's Easton Stick doing?
Not doing anything.
Oh, okay. Then copacetic is nice. Carson Wentz's mental.
But remember, Jody, you do not want the backup quarterback to play. It is the goal that they do not play. It is an insurance policy.
Did the Eagles not win the Super Bowl with their backup quarterback? The biggest goal the organization ever had, the biggest celebration ever had, was won by a backup quarterback. So how can we de-emphasize backup quarterbacks and go, oh, what you need to prioritize over whether the guy can actually play or not is the mental state of the guy that you think is going to be your starter. That's just a crazy way of doing business.
That's why you bring in the Nick Foleses of the world. That's why you bring in the Josh McCowns of the world, who almost won a playoff game with a torn hamstring. But what you don't do is draft a 21-year-old kid 10 months off the 27-year-old franchise quarterback. Look, it's easy to say now. It's easy to play hindsight. I freely admit I didn't think it would be as bad as it turned out to be, but now I could laugh about it. And the Eagles know it, Jody. The Eagles know they made a mistake, and they said, we screwed that up. We screwed it up.
I'm glad one of us is laughing. I went from smiling on draft night because I got it. You went from frowning on draft night because it befuddled you to now you can laugh at it. I'm just that much more upset that Carson Wentz couldn't deal with it.
Well, you can be upset about the player personally.
Yes.
I'm looking at it from an organizational standpoint and saying, you have to be savvier than that. You can't just expect to be smarter than everybody else. There's a reason people don't do it, and we saw the reason. Now, you can look at your team, the New York Jets, up the turnpike. Look, they drafted a kid in the top 5, and then they're back in the top 5 drafting another kid a few years later. However, they had made the decision, we're moving on. We're done. Yeah. We're done with Sam Darnold. If you made that decision, I would have no problem with it. It's not about the quick turnover. It's about you made the decision. This is your guy. This is the franchise quarterback. And then you brought in a guy to be a cost-effective backup, trying to be smarter than everybody else, trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and it blew up on you. You have to learn from that, I would hope. If Jalen Hurts develops, it becomes a star quarterback. I don't want the Eagles taking a quarterback on the first 2 days of the draft.
Guess what? I think they'd be perfectly fine doing so because Jalen Hurts had some moxie. He understands the game. He's a competitor. Carson Wentz is a wuss who, oh my God, they took my replacement. How could they think to take my potential replacement? Lose my mind. We got to hit
the break to get to Ed, but I agree. Look, we're saying 2 different things. You're angry at the player. I have no problem with that. I'm more angry at the organization for not thinking this whole thing out as well as they should have.
I'm angry at both, but there is one big difference between the Jets and Eagles. The individuals behind the selection of Sam Darnold, see you later, bye. They're out of New York. So you got a new regime in there that can make the clean break and go, we're going on to somebody else. It's the same organization, the same head coach, the same general manager, the same owner that did what they did here in Philadelphia. So I don't think you can compare the two. But we digress. We will not digress any further. We'll only digress to a quickie timeout. Then we will progress. Is that a word? Well, who knows? Eddie Kratz is going to join us next here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.